What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I'm going to be going over all the perks on the exotic class items and ranking them in a tier list. I've made videos breaking down each and every perk and how they work, so check those out after this one if you want a more in-depth breakdown of what exactly each one does. And because I made those videos, I feel that I have good knowledge of how these perks work, and so I wanted to give my opinion on which are the best and worst perks. I'll just go in alphabetical order to keep things simple. So first up is Spirit of the Abeyant. This gives us the better tracking with Drenger's Lash without giving us Woven Mail. Suspend is a pretty strong ability in Destiny, and this allows us to do it easily and often. It's a solid B tier, just a good option. Spirit of Alpha Lupi is next, and this just gives us a bit of health back when we use our Barricade. This is basically a useless perk in my opinion, and I said a while ago that this exotic needs to be buffed to give it Restoration instead. The health bump may have some niche use case scenarios in PvP, but overall it is still very weak. So yeah, I don't like this one at all. F tier. It's just not cut out for today's sandbox. Next is Spirit of Apotheosis. This gives us Insatiable after casting our super, allowing us to spam abilities. This is a pretty strong effect, but sadly we don't have a high uptime on it. So it is good when we get it, but because it is quite infrequent to take advantage of, I'm going to put it in B tier. If you just use it as a swap exotic for when you cast your super or during damage phases, which is how people use the base exotic, then I could argue A tier. But yeah, on its own in a locked loadout scenario, no better than B. Strong effect, but low uptime. Spirit of Armamentarium is a really solid perk. Giving 2 grenades on Prismatic Titan is quite strong. Honestly think it deserves to be an A tier. 2 pulse grenades or 2 shackle grenades is very strong. Next is Spirit of the Assassin. This is cool because you can get it on any class, and going invis can really help you stay alive in endgame content. And unlike Apotheosis, this can have some very high uptime because it works on finishers in addition to your charged melees. Because of that, I'm putting it in the A tier. Spirit of the Bear is next. This gives us super energy when we block damage with Unbreakable. But Unbreakable is almost never used on Prismatic Titan, and it consumes your grenade energy, which in my opinion makes it really not worth running. I like to use my grenades offensively and not to block damage, so this one is going in the D tier for me. I just don't think it's really worth running. Spirit of the Caliban is the first perk that has made me make another tier on this list. This is the tier where your spirit perk is actually better than the exotic that inspired it, and the reason for that is because on Caliban's hand you must use proximity knives, where Spirit of Caliban works with combination blow, threaded spike, or any other melee that you want to use, and that flexibility makes it awesome. It also makes it even more powerful because it's far easier to proc in high-end content than the solar exotic variant. So it goes at the top of this list as being stronger than the exotic it's modeled after. But even without that tier, I would give it an S because ignitions are very powerful and you can proc them very often with this spirit perk in the right build. Spirit of the Claw gives you an extra melee charge. Incinerator Snap and Arcane Needle are pretty nice, but overall, there are better perks. This one is a solid C tier, middle of the road. Not amazing, but not terrible. Spirit of Contact is a nice perk because Jolt is an excellent verb. It gives awesome ad clear, and because of this, I think it belongs in A tier. Spirit of the Coyote gives us a second dodge charge, and having 2 dodge charges gives us a lot of utility. It can work with Ascension, Threaded Spectre, Winter Shroud, Radiant Dodge, Gambler's Dodge for more melees, Marksman Dodge for quick reloads during DPS. It's extremely versatile, and because of this, I think it deserves a high B. Spirit of Surturachne is another one of those rare perks that is actually better on Prismatic than it is on its associated subclass. With Strand, you must use Grapple to get Woven Mail, where on Prismatic, any grenade will work, giving you much more subclass flexibility, and losing the flinch resistance is really not a problem in PvE. So because it's better than its base version, it will go at the top of the list, but on its own, having on-demand Woven Mail is quite good, so I will give it a solid B tier. Spirit of the Dragon is next, and this reloads your weapons and gives you incredible handling speed. A strong perk indeed, with high uptime thanks to quick dodge cooldowns, but the effect it provides is fairly niche. So even though it makes your weapons feel awesome and is really good for DPS swap rotations, I think it's too niche to warrant anything higher than C. That being said, if you're a Dragon Shadow lover in PvP, then getting this with 6 Coyote is literally like having 2 exotics in one for PvP, so you may rate it way higher. Spirit of Eternal Warrior falls into the same trap as Apotheosis. A strong effect, but not one you can take advantage of too often, and your weapons have to match your super damage type. So for that, I'm putting it in B tier. It's a very strong effect, but quite low uptime. Spirit of Foe Tracer is next. The only thing keeping this from being S tier is that you can only proc the weapon damage boost from powerful combatants. If this worked on just any ads, it would be absolutely incredible. That being said, I think it is one of those rare perks that is actually better as a spirit perk simply because it gives you more loadout flexibility. You can run a stasis weapon with stasis melees, and then a solar weapon with golden gun and swarm grenades, and you could proc the ×4 weapon surge for both thanks to being able to mix and match your elemental abilities. And the transcendent grenade even works to give a stasis and solar buff. So it's a very unique perk, and depending how much you value extra weapon damage will depend on where you rank this. Because it can have some decently high uptime, I will go with A tier. Spirit of the Filaments grants you Devour when casting your Empowering Rift. Unfortunately, most people don't use Empowering Rift, but because Devour can give you your health back, this perk may just make it worth it. I love Devour, and being able to get it pretty much on demand is very strong, so I think it deserves an A tier. Spirit of Galanor is next, and this is another perk that is better on Prismatic than it is on Solar, just thanks to us not being limited to Blade Barrage. And with the potential to easily get 50% of your super back on most of the Prismatic supers, I think it deserves an S tier. Next is Spirit of Gear Falcon. This gives us volatile rounds when we emerge from being invis, which is actually pretty easy to do, but it does pigeonhole you into running Stylus Executioner. Again, this comes down to how much you like this exotic, but me being a big Gear Falcon fan, I'm going to put this one in A tier. Volatile is a pretty strong effect in PvE, and this gives us big uptime on it. Next is Spirit of Harmony, and Mantle of Battle Harmony received a big buff in the final shape where its effect no longer has a cooldown. So as long as you're getting kills with a weapon that matches your super element, you will get a super very quickly. And with strong supers like Nova Bomb and Song of Flame, this is extremely powerful. Obviously, it is build dependent, but if you match your weapons around taking advantage of this, then I think it's an S tier perk. The uptime is simply incredible, and the payoff is more frequent supers. I love this perk. Spirit of the Horn allows us to send out a Solar Blast with our Barricade that scorches and damages enemies. Is it fun? Yes. Is it strong? Not overly. A low C tier for me. Spirit of Hoarfrost allows our Barricade to make stasis crystals. Now, I see the synergy with a stasis build because shattering stasis crystals can give a lot of benefits from our fragments, but on Prismatic, this is just a novelty and does not have much utility outside of being able to slow or freeze enemies that are right on top of you. In high-end content, that's probably too risky, but because it does have some subclass verb synergy and slow and freeze can be used to counter champions, I will give it a D instead of an F. Spirit of Inmost Light is next, and I think we all know how powerful our abilities have gotten, and this just allows us to get quicker cooldowns on everything, which is naturally very strong. Obviously this perk is a bit build dependent, but I think it gives us so much flexibility and so much uptime that it's hard not to put it in S tier. Spirit of the Liar is next, and Combination Blow paired with this has long been a strong combination. Plus, being able to pair it with Facet of Courage arguably makes it stronger on Prismatic than on an Arc subclass, and we can go Invis with Stylus Executioner, so you don't need Assassin's Cowl on Prismatic. So for those reasons, it has to go S tier. There's just so much good synergy going on with Prismatic that makes it S tier. You can two-shot GM champions with it, which is obviously insanely powerful, and the one downside is it has a lack of ad clear compared to Arc where you can spread Jolt, but luckily you can pair this with Spirit of Caliban to cause ignitions for ad clear, so yeah, Spirit of the Liar has to be S tier, it's just too strong. Next is Spirit of the Necrotic. This allows our melees to poison enemies and to spread poison. But unfortunately, the poison does not ramp up in damage over time, which is something I really like about the base exotic and high-end content. That being said, it can still spread poison, which is amazing for ad clear, and the melee in Song of Flame even works to help spread the poison. So I will still put it in A tier because the effect it provides is one of the best in the entire game for easy ad clear. Spirit of the Ophidian is next. It gives your weapons higher handling. Sadly, we lose the increase to reload speed, but high handling is always nice. It's great in PvP, and even nice for general play in PvE. It's just a solid perk, old reliable. It has constant uptime, but I don't think its effect is game changing, so I will just give it a solid C tier. It's not bad by any means, but lots of perks are more powerful, and this is coming from an Ophidian aspect main in PvP. Next is Renewal Grasps. This gives you frost armor if you stand inside your dusk field, and it makes enemies in your dusk field grenade deal 50% less damage. This is obviously a strong effect, but it does mean you have to run dusk fields, and sadly, we don't get Touch of Winter on Prismatic for bigger dusk fields. That being said, it is still a strong perk in endgame PvE, so I will give it a solid B tier. Spirit of Scars is next. Weapon final blows that match our super's element create a burst of healing and grant us restoration. Restoration is one of the strongest verbs in Destiny, and this gives it to us very often, so long as we are using our weapons to get kills. So thanks to the high uptime and the solid benefit it provides, I will give it a solid A tier. Next is Spirit of Severance. Powered melee or finisher final blows unleash a damaging explosion. This is really nice for some free damage and bonus ad clear. You can proc it fairly frequently, and the lower the combat difficulty, the better it gets. It can kill heaps of enemies in lower end content, so it really depends on your build and what kind of content you're taking it into. But it has a decent effect and pretty high uptime if you play around it. I think it is low A tier or high B tier, but I will be generous and go with A tier. Spirit of the Stag gives you damage reduction when you stand in your rift. This is actually pretty strong in PvP, but in PvE, I guess it is just nice to have, but it doesn't really do much. If you're taking a shit ton of damage in your rift, you will need to hide anyways or you'll just die. I don't know, I just don't think it's that great. F tier for me. Next is Spirit of the Star Eater. The fact we can get this on Warlock and Titan is just awesome. The uptime on it is not great because you have to get your super and then still collect 6 orbs, but when you do, the payoff is massive. It is meta for raid DPS builds, and it's even strong in GM speedruns, among other areas of the game. As usual, it's content dependent, but it allows you to deal way more damage than you normally would, and you can use it as a swap exotic. So as a swap, it's definitely S tier, but because of the low uptime in general play, I will have to give it a solid A tier. You could easily argue S if you want, and I wouldn't blame you, but there's more to the game of Destiny than just high damage supers, and I like my perks to have a little more uptime than this, but I can't argue its strength when you do get to use it. Next is Spirit of the Starfire. Grenades recharge from empowered weapon damage, with empowered weapon final blows granting more grenade energy. So the grenade uptime is really nice, but I don't think Prismatic Warlocks have the strongest grenades outside of Vortex grenades with Facet of Dominance, and it forces you to run Empowering Rift, which is my least favorite rift to run. So I will just give this one a solid B. It is a good and strong effect, but I don't necessarily jive with the playstyle around it. Spirit of the Swarm is next. Destroying a Tangle spawns Threadlings. For me, this is F tier. Threadlings are nice I guess, but they're not that powerful, and we can't make them deal more damage like we can on Strand with Thread of Evolution. To me, it's just a perk that doesn't provide a ton of benefit, and there are many stronger perks to use. Next is Spirit of Syntheseps. If you know me and my channel, you will know I freaking love this exotic. And even though we lose our bonus super damage with the Spirit perk, the increase to melee damage is still incredibly strong. It's great on any of the classes, especially Titans with Consecration, where it is arguably the strongest build we have ever seen in Destiny 2. But it is even fun with an Incinerator Snap Warlock or a Threaded Spike or Combination Blow Hunter. Not to mention, it also works with Glaives, which I'm a big fan of. It's just an all-around awesome perk. S tier. Spirit of Verity is next. This is a pretty strong effect, giving your grenades double damage and reducing your grenade cooldown. It works with Gunpowder Gamble as well, and also your Transcendent grenades. I would really only run it with certain grenades though. Vortex with Facet of Dominance on Warlock, Pulse Grenades with Dominance on Titan, and probably Grapple Hunter with Gunpowder Gamble. But if you build around it, it can be quite strong. Low A tier for me. Spirit of Vesper is next. Rifts periodically release arc shockwaves. Honestly, not that powerful. If you run the Stormtrance super, then it will at least blind enemies, which gives it some more utility, but if you're just using this for the shockwaves, it's weak as hell. I think it is going in the D tier. And lastly, we have Spirit of Wormhusk. PvP players may like running this instead of the regular exotic, as they basically do the same thing, but the small health bump it gives is basically useless in PvE, and there are many better perks that you could run on Hunter. So this is an F tier for me. And that is going to do it for my tier list on the exotic class item perks. How do you think I did? Do you agree or disagree with most of my placements? Let me know down below. Overall, I'm really impressed with the creativity Bungie had when designing these things. They're a lot of fun and open up even more unique and fun playstyles. I'm a pretty big fan overall, even if I hate the acquisition method. A knockout system or dupe protection would be so nice. Anyways, that's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching if you're still here. I really appreciate it. Please like and sub and all that other stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.